So there's no beating around the bush to start this one off. Something massive just happened that very well might change the entirety of the landscape of the NBA as we know it right now, with this of course being the James Harden trade. The James Harden saga has been going on for weeks on weeks at this point, and everybody involved seemed to be at their wits' end today as it finally came to a conclusion, as the Houston Rockets shipped him out to the Brooklyn Nets to play alongside his good friend Kevin Durant. There's a lot going on here with this trade for some very obvious reasons, and while every single YouTuber on the platform will be talking about Harden going to the Nets and focusing on that aspect, I'm going to be diving more into the parts of the deal that will inevitably be brushed to the side, mostly talking about what every other team involved in the trade received and how this move will impact them. I will of course be discussing the biggest part, obviously being James Harden going to the Nets and what it means for the Nets this season and moving forward, but every single other YouTuber is going to be putting out a video talking about exactly that, so I didn't want to just repeat the same things everyone else will be saying. Now, before we get started, it turns out about 67% of you watching aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, as not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now, with that being said, let's begin. As I said at the start, I will be starting things off about the main attraction of the trade being, of course, James Harden now being a Brooklyn Net. The Nets shipped out Caris LeVert, Jarrett Allen, Taurean Prince, Rodion Kurucs, 4 first-round picks, and 4 first-round pick swaps, and in return, they received superstar James Harden. Anyone with any dearth of recent NBA history knowledge should recognize that this looks awfully familiar for another trade the Nets did not even a decade ago when they traded away all of their future picks in a deal that landed them a washed Paul Pierce and a washed Kevin Garnett, and that deal came back to bite them. But the difference this time is that James Harden is still very much a superstar that can produce at the absolute highest level when he's locked in, and while he hasn't exactly looked locked in a lot this year, that's likely because he was fed up with the Rockets and was doing everything he could to force his way out. Sure, mortgaging that many picks that represent so far into the team's future can be a major risk, as we've seen already once before, but for a player of Harden's stature, that's the price you have to pay. I would be incredibly surprised if Harden's nonchalant attitude continued in Brooklyn, because all jokes aside, his intent throughout this entire process has been to land himself on a team where he can legitimately compete for a title, with the Nets always being at the top of his wish list, so he got his wish and should be ready for a fresh start. One last thing I want to mention before moving on to the other side of the trades is that this deal could end up saving the Nets' season, because even though the plan from the start was always to have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving paired together, Kyrie has been off in a world of his own doing his own thing, and every report that comes out complicates the situation between him and the Nets even further. One report says that Kyrie was never a fan of the Steve Nash hire, and that him and Kevin Durant have been a bit distant lately, and another one says that Kyrie is prepared to sit out the entirety of the season. Now, I'll be honest and admit that I don't know how valid these reports actually are, and they could all be misconstrued and false, but at the very least, they are concerning, so adding James Harden to this team still gives the Nets that elite shot-creating, playmaking ball handler to run the show alongside Kevin Durant in case of this worst-case scenario where Kyrie actually does hold out for a long time. Then together, all three of them make for an offensive nightmare for opposing defenses, as they can all take turns going at it. Now, enough of that, on to the rest of the deal, starting with the Indiana Pacers surprising everybody and involving themselves in the trade by trading away Victor Oladipo as a part of the deal, and in return, receiving Caris LeVert and a second-round pick. The Oladipo situation may not have gotten the same amount of buzz as the Harden one did, but that's another one where there were rumblings of Oladipo wanting out of Indiana, and he just so happened to get his wish in the same deal. Looking at at this from Indiana's perspective, Oladipo only had 1 year left on his contract anyway, and in all likelihood was leaving in free agency. So I also love this move for Indiana to go out and obtain incredible value in return for him instead of losing him for nothing. Caris LeVert is a player I've been excited about for a few years now, and I've always wanted to see him in a system where he would be given more freedom to play to his potential, and coming to Indiana, he's going to step into the spot previously filled by Oladipo and finally get that, while also being able to play for a strong playoff contender still built on their defense like Indiana is. We've seen spurts from LeVert, like his performances in the bubble, where he's unleashed his full scoring package while also even demonstrating a much improved ability to handle some playmaking responsibilities as a secondary ball handler, and Indiana has actually been looking for more playmaking, so again, this is a match made in heaven for me. LeVert is only in the first year of his 3-year contract that he just signed, so Indiana turned an expiring former star plagued by injuries and might never reach his former self to a young player with star potential on a team-friendly contract for 3 more seasons. This now brings us to the team that shipped Harden away, the Houston Rockets. They were in a difficult situation, currently sitting with a record of 3 wins and 6 losses, suffering through a lack of chemistry because of a star that doesn't want to be there, so at the very least, now they can begin to turn a new leaf. Again, I know I haven't really had anything negative to say about any of the sides of the trade yet, but I also do like the return that the Rockets got considering the circumstances. No, they didn't land a 2-way star player in Ben Simmons, which is who every report stated was the player that they were targeting the most, but they now have a treasure chest of picks and assets. They have a player in Victor Oladipo who is in a prove-it year as he approaches free agency, looking to return to his prior all-star form, and most importantly, this whole mess is behind them. The Pacers are a top 10 defense so far this year, and if there's one end of the court that Victor Oladipo has always excelled in, it's been his perimeter defense, so he was contributing to that. Meanwhile, the Rockets find themselves in the bottom third of the league in defense right now, ranking 22nd overall, so again, this is a good match between the two of them to hopefully improve the team on defense overall. At his best, Oladipo was a member of the all-defense team, and while injuries have been holding him back the last few years, he has looked pretty good so far this season and showed signs of at least getting somewhat back to the consistent level of play he used to be at. This year, he's been averaging about 20 points, 6 rebounds, and 4 assists per game. His overall scoring ability and perimeter shooting has looked much more comfortable, and now playing alongside John Wall, he'll have a dynamic playmaking point guard to play off of. Admittedly, this trade is incredibly risky for the Rockets though, and it could possibly backfire on them. As I said, Oladipo is approaching free agency, and while he is going to play his tail off this year to try to earn as big of a contract as he possibly can, there's no guarantee the team he accepts a big contract from will be the Houston Rockets. Is trading James Harden for all of these picks and 1 year of Oladipo worth it? That's tough to say right now. Lastly, the Cleveland Cavaliers included themselves in the deal in order to bring in Jarrett Allen and Taurean Prince, which is unequivocally a good thing for them, but it's also weird. The Cavaliers have a lot of big men on their roster right now, with Andre Drummond being the one leading the way, then JaVale McGee giving the team good minutes off the bench, Larry Nance Jr. is having a very strong season for them in the front court, Kevin Love still gets injured often, but he's also still there, and even Thon Maker is trying to turn his career around here, so adding Jarrett Allen into the mix is going to be strange trying to carve out minutes. Allen is a talented, young rim-protecting, rebounding, and pick-and-roll big man, and bringing him in is definitely more of a long-term play to pair him with their young guards as they all grow together, but for now, their rotation is going to be interesting to try to navigate. And that's all I have to say on this matter. It's a trade that makes the league incredibly intriguing to watch play out, and I'm excited to see what happens. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the trade for everyone involved. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.